Hi, welcome to Cherie's Weight Loss Journey. I'm getting out today. I've been dragging all day. I'm telling you. It's hot. And, I just had to get out the house. I tell you. Even though that's one of my inspirations to do every day is to at least get out of the house a little bit every day. I do have a few rants. Some things that, is on my mind. One of them is, don't believe the lie that you should manifest in secret. Okay? Manifesting in secret is like trying to open up a business in a community where they don't want you to open up a business. Okay? You didn't announce to them that you were opening up a business. You didn't let anybody know. And we see this in relationships also, where people, they manifest these relationships, nobody knows about it, and boom, they just expect the whole world to accept, what they're laying on them. And when they don't, it's like they're surprised. It's like, why would you be surprised? Why in the world would you be surprised that you throwing shit on the walls and you want people to, to accept that? Like, what? Right? So, even when it comes to like a business plan, you have a business plan. You cannot manifest by yourself, right? All of the resources are accounted for. There is nothing on the planet that has not been accounted for, if by nothing else, boundaries of territory alone. Okay? You can't go into the desert, squat there without the permission of the state. Okay? And the state may even allow you, but they may put up some, some requirements, some rules, like you gotta have water, you gotta have plumbing, you gotta have sewage, you gotta have, a street, you have to, there's all of these things that they will require of you, as part of the agreement of letting you develop, I don't know, in New Mexico. Okay? That's just an example. Another example is, say you have an idea, right? You have an idea. You want to create, right? But you can't just create out of air. You need financial backing, right? You need a loan. You need investors. You need material. You at least need an outlet of distribution. Even if you were selling videos, you need an outlet of distribution. Okay? So, how are you going to get support without, announcing what you're going to do and that it's approved? That's the whole reason for announcing. You make the announcement to see if you can get the approval. And once you get the approval, then that makes it easier to start getting the investors and the backing required. Sometimes you just need somebody, to give you a little credit, right? You need the government to relieve you of some taxes so that you can build, right? Even an inventor, they need backers. You might have the best idea in the world, but they could do to you what they did to Tesla, right? Tesla, he put a patent on his invention, and they was gonna wait until the patent, had expired, but he re-upped his patent. And so, he mysteriously dies. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, after he dies, people are trying to utilize, his invention, without penalty or having to invest. So I hear throughout the spiritual community all the time where people are saying, oh, manifest in secret, manifest in secret. How are you going to manifest in secret? Okay, let me rephrase that. How are you going to be successful in your manifestation if you're doing it in secret? Damn, there's something in the air, I'm telling you. So, I totally disagree. Just like if you open up a business, and they don't want you there, they can block you. They can rezone the whole district just so that, you won't be able to do business there. These are things that they could have done, like with strip clubs and stuff like that, but they didn't because they were all being paid underneath the table, to make it happen. Not to mention, fringe benefits or friends with benefits. So anyway, that was one of the things that had really bothered me, right? Where, I hear it over and over and over in the spiritual community. Oh, manifest in secret, manifest in secret. No, you're not going to be successful manifesting in secret. Why? Because you do need the approval of people. And if you're around such an environment where you're not going to be able to get approval of the people around you, how successful will that business be after you have made the investment? You have poured the money into it. You have spent the time, effort. Who knows what you sacrificed to develop this project that you were manifesting in secret. It just doesn't make sense to me. I personally would want to know up front, hey, if in spirit I'm not getting, the replies or the responses that I want in spirit, what makes me think that I'm going to be successful if I bring my manifestations down to the 3D? I mean, I really want to know. How does that work? How it works, let me tell you how it works. How it works is you get established by whatever means you took to get established, only to find out that you're not going to get the support. You're not going to get the customers. They're going to not let you get away with even one late payment before they call in your loan. Stuff like that. Don't be ridiculous thinking that you could outsmart a system that's been around longer than most of us has even been alive. And then here was another thing. This person had the audacity to say, you can't sit around and wait for justice. I personally say that's the best thing for you to do. If your environment is so corrupt that you can't wait for justice because there is no justice, why would you get out into an unjust world situation? Why? Right? If you were in a fucked up relationship, right, and you're not getting any justice from the fucked up relationship, you best believe you're going to get the same situation happen to you again, except in a different vessel. Because if you're sitting around and people are making the assumption that because you're sitting around that you're waiting for justice, right? That assumption is them making an ass of them and you, whatever. Okay? But I would rather wait for justice than to put myself back into harm's way, whether it's because the environment was corrupt or whether it is because the men are unhealed, right? The men, broken the covenant of being, protectors and providers, and instead they're the threat. That's what I'm talking about. And then for them to assume that, because you don't appear to be moving around and doing something, that means that you're waiting for justice. Let's face it. In order for a person to do anything and go anywhere, you have to have options. And that's what money is all about. Money is about giving people options to do more things. If you only have enough money to sustain yourself with the basic needs of survival, which is shelter, food, clothing, maybe transportation, then why in the world are you going to get out into this world and spend money that you don't have with the hopes of running into somebody that's just willing to throw money at you? I mean, I don't know. That's some kind of stripper mentality or something, that just because you walk down the street that people are going to start throwing dollar bills at you. Yeah. Now, they got some people that got some very seductive walks, but my God, even that is, far-fetched to believe that all they have to do is walk down the street, and people are just going to start throwing money at them. Like, oh, thank you for seducing my mind. Let me give you $10,000. I'm sure it goes a lot deeper than that. Ooh. I took me some allergy pills. I'm really hoping they start kicking in. But yeah, I know I had to tell my kids, and even, some of my relationships, that, hey, you can't just run out there and spend money unless, you have intentions and a means, a method, to make money. And of course they countered back talking about, well, you can't expect opportunities to just come knocking at your door. And I'm like, no, opportunity's not going to come knocking at your door. But, you need a well-developed plan. You can't just go out there willy-nilly and just spend money and time and effort and stuff and think that, you're going to just run into money, or that you got that walk and people are just going to start throwing money at you. Unless you're a prostitute. And yeah, a lot of Americans do have a prostitute mentality. They do. But then, later on down the line, they'll be sitting up in regret, remembering, what does it profit a man to have all the money in the world but to lose his soul or her soul? Now, I don't convict women the same way that I convict men. I convict women only when they do business with terrorists. And that terrorist might be their own spouse, or their own boyfriend, or their own family member. Whereas a man, he's in defiance of God himself for not working every day of his fucking life. And he knows it. He ain't giving no birth to no children. And he wouldn't if he could. He can't stay sober for 9 months. Much less stay sober for 2 decades, the time that it takes to actually raise a kid. That's why most of them aren't even in the house, so they can go out and drink and drug. And speaking of drugs, I had posted on my Facebook where LSD was derived from a fungus. And my point of view was that our bodies are not equipped a lot of times to fight off fungus, which is why we're so susceptible to things like mold. Right? And somebody reported me to Facebook. And I was looking at that and they were like, well, you're not going to be able to sell drugs or do videos and this and that and third on the channel. And I'm like, my whole point of view of even making a post was to cite an AI posting of how LSD was produced, which is a derivative of a fungus. And which is why so many people are susceptible to having bad trips and reoccurring trips from this fungus that their bodies is unequipped to fight off. Right? Now they'll say fungus in your toes and stuff is like, can be deadly. Right? Right. You get a fungus anywhere on your body, and if it gets into your bloodstream, you're going to need medication to fight it off. So yeah, that kind of pissed me off. And I'm like, these people out here that are doing some really messed up stuff, because I have heard that some people would think that they could take some of these hallucinogenics and stuff, and that was supposed to be an avenue to spiritual enlightenment. And it's like, nah, it's not. The only spiritual enlightenment is you got is that you didn't go crazy, you didn't die, and it might make you spiritually enlightened to realize that you survived. And you will probably have reoccurring episodes to remind you about that trip. You're going to have some pause on your hands. And pause is an acronym. Oh, wow. That's the first time I ever seen brown grass on a golf course. What? I guess they was trying to spend too much money trying to keep that grass green. But they really should just do, what do they call it? The disc golf. Instead of, dedicating a whole prime land for nothing but golfers. So yeah, that's been my rant. That's been what I've been ranting about today. And like I said, I got a petition in the Supreme Spiritual Court, of the women who have negotiated with terrorists.